name is Raymond.
My name is Ana-Alicia.
And we are going to be going through questions submitted by Tony for short. I'm going to be letting Ana-Alicia take over a little bit. When did you decide you wanted to be an actress? Did you ever have any other vocation?
Well, I didn't think I decided. I think what happened is when I was 3 years old, I was just dancing and singing and, being the center of my father's life in Mexico, of his world. And I think when he passed away, that need actually to be, someone's light probably stayed inside of me, but it was more like a calling. And then when I got into my teen years, I felt it was a way of perhaps changing the world, adding something positive. And it just changed with, as I developed as a person. And then at 11 years old, my aunt encouraged me to get into a poetry contest, and she taught me this little poem called The Raggedy Man. And I still remember it because that's where I learned about, what it was to be an artist. It was something like the raggedy man who works for Pa, and he's the nicest man I ever saw. And she would just say to me, my Aunt Marie came from, San Francisco, and she knew a lot about museums, and she knew a lot about painting, and she knew a lot about music. And I was from, living in El Paso, Texas at that time, and, not exposed to a lot of that. And she exposed me to the wonder and the magic of being an artist, and I will forever love her. And then after that, I was exposed to more by my drama teacher, Mrs. Card. And when I was 13, somebody fell out of a play. She came into an English class or a math class with Mrs. Hines, and she said, can anybody learn lines overnight? Because we need to fill this spot for this Swedish girl in our play, our high school competition play. And I just raised my hand without even thinking. I think if I had thought, Raymond, I would have been so scared, I would never, ever have done it. And I raised my hand, and the next thing I knew, I was speaking with a Swedish accent. I can't do it now, but I was like in the merry-go-round. I played the Swedish girl in the merry-go-round, and it was so much fun, and I just got bit again and again and again. And Mrs. Card allowed me to do Our Town and Kiss Me Kate and Brigadoon, and it was always in me. I'm sorry, next question. I just went on and on.
No, that's awesome. I've never heard that story.
Yeah.
So that was your first acting gig on the stage, and then this next question asks about your first acting gig on TV, which was on a daytime soap named Ryan's Hope, who happened to also be called Alicia too. Was she like Melissa as a character?
No. I was raised in El Paso, Texas, and I had an incredible family. And my grandmother was very, very strict, and I went to an all-Catholic school. So I was very naive and, I don't know, I wanted to be a nun. I used to go around to classrooms when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I put, on the day that you announce what your profession's going to be, and people would go around wanting to be lawyers, and I put a sheet all over my head I found in my linen closet and all over my body, and I made this nun habit, and I went around and told everybody when I was, 7, 8, 9, that I wanted to be a nun because I wanted to do good things. It was very interesting. So when I started acting, I was always playing, the virgins, the sweet little girls. And so Alicia, that happened very interesting. I was here checking out Los Angeles, thinking about applying to law school, but really wanting to be an actress, but really thinking I better be practical and be a lawyer so I can take care of my mama. And I couldn't decide, and sure enough, I just went around looking at agents and knocking on their doors, which you're never supposed to do. And I did everything wrong. I knocked on everybody's door. They kicked me out, and then I met this incredible guy, Carlos Alvarado. He sent me on my first interview. I met this man named Joel Thurm, who was the head of casting for NBC. Joel looked at me and he said, you're about 5 pounds overweight. Your nose is a little crooked. He goes, but you got something. I don't know what it is. So he said, next time I'm, doing a screen test, I'm going to just add you to the end of it so that to see what it is you have on camera. I just need to see if you have something on camera. So they called me, my agent called me and said, he's going to add you to the end of a screen test. So make sure you show up. So I showed up, and I was in some jeans and a shirt, and Joel looked at me and he goes, you know what, Ana-Alicia, you got to be a little upscale. So he took off his sweater and he put it on me. It was a very nice sweater. And it was the very end of all of these girls who had done the screen test, and I'd watched these girls for this soap opera, and they'd all said, well, my name is so-and-so, and I worked with Paul Newman on this movie, or my name is so-and-so, and I worked with, Tony Curtis on this movie. And I went up and I said, hi, my name is Ana-Alicia, and I'm an actress, and I love it. Because I had nothing else to say. So sure enough, a week later, my agent called me, and he goes, I thought you said you were good. And I said, I thought I was. And he goes, oh my God. He goes, just sit down. And I said, okay. And he goes, you're going to New York in 2 days. You got the lead in this soap opera. And I said, oh my God. So I was flown to New York in 2 days. And I showed up on the set. And the role was Alicia Nieves. And when I auditioned, I didn't have an accent. Nobody told me I had to have an accent. And that day that I show up to film, the director and everyone goes, well, we think you should have an accent. So literally about 30 minutes before I go on the air, I have to come up with an accent. And it was just the worst accent. It was the worst accent. It was a Puerto Rican accent, and I never had. It was like making it up as I go. So for the next year, I slowly got rid of it. And by the time I left the show a year later, Alicia had no more accent. But that was my first camera experience.
And to add on to that, Fran from Puerto de Sagunto, Spain, asked, what memories do you keep about Ryan's Hope? Have you watched any of these episodes when SoapNet reran it a few years ago?
I haven't watched it. I think I caught a piece of it a few years ago. A fan had sent me a clip. And then we just recently, actually, you and I recently saw a couple of clips of Ryan's Hope. And I think it was my goodbye scene on Ryan's Hope when I say I'm going to go off to bigger and better things. And it was like, and you said, Raymond, yeah, you went off to Falcon Crest.
Yeah. It was funny because the Alicia on the show was talking about how she wasn't going to handle any more drama and any more of the insanity that she was surrounding herself in. And then obviously your next role was Melissa.
Yes, which is very...
Who was probably the creator of insanity.
Yes, it's true. Or the victim of insanity.
Yeah.
No, I like the creator better. Yeah. So when I watch it, it brings back a lot of very sweet memories for me. That was a magical time. My daughter, who's also, who is an actress and now really doing so well, having just graduated from Carnegie Mellon, and she's now doing a lot of, guest stars. She reminded me of how when you first start working on these shows that you've seen, it just feels so unreal. And for me, being in New York City, I'd never been in New York City. I was from El Paso, Texas. I mean, to go into that city, and I remember getting into the airport and calling my mother when I landed, and I said, Mama, you always said I walk too fast, I talk too fast. I said, well, I'm in my city because everybody walks fast and talks fast. It was a magical time.
Our next question from Tony, he asked, I think you have a very funny story about the nickname you were given when you arrived at Hollywood. Can you tell us?
Oh, well, it wasn't a nickname. It was like, my name was Ana-Alicia Ortiz. And so when I was, choosing my stage name, I just noticed everywhere I would go, they would go, I said, my name is Ana-Alicia Ortiz, and they would go, oh, Anna Ortiz. Anna Ortiz. Anna Ortiz. I go, no, it's Ana-Alicia Ortiz. Oh, Anna Ortiz. Or Anna Ortiz. Or Anna. It was just like, or Alicia. Oh, goodness. And so I figured if I wanted them to call me, my first name was Ana-Alicia, and not Anna Ortiz or Anna Ortiz, because that was not my name either, even though there's a really wonderful actress I hear who's Anna Ortiz now. But that wasn't my name. I decided to drop, Ortiz and go with, just Ana-Alicia. But then everyone thought Alicia was my last name, but at least they said it, like Ana-Alicia. So now I get to use it all, which is nice.
That is nice. Adora from Ireland asks a couple questions about the TV shows you guest starred in prior to your big breakthrough in Falcon Crest, like The Hardy Boys, the original Battlestar Galactica, and Buck Rogers. She asks, did you think your character on The Hardy Boys, Suzanne Clifford, was similar to Melissa when she was mentally unstable?
Well, I never thought of the Hardy Boys role as unstable. She was kind of a wildling. I mean, she, drove a motorcycle. That was the most fun show, I have to tell you. I remember showing up to the set, and there were these gorgeous guys, the Hardy Boys. Oh my gosh, I didn't know which one was cuter, and I got to ride a motorcycle with them. Motorcycle, I can't even pronounce motorcycle. Motorcycle. I played, this kind of crazy, kooky girl, but I just never related her to Melissa, although I guess it has to come, from an organic place inside of me. So I think that part is still there. You know what? I ended up really driving motorcycles. I ended up, learning. Scotty Hewitt, my dear friend who I love, taught me how to race cars. I raced them. I was the only girl that finished in the Celebrity Grand Prix, and then later I raced with him and Lorenzo and Perry King in the Riverside race, literally slamming into walls and having to get out through the window.
Wow.
And then he also taught me how to ride a motorcycle when I almost killed myself. But so I've had a really fun, full life. Before children, I don't do that anymore.
Adora also asked, you worked on Buck Rogers in the original Battlestar Galactica. Which was your favorite?
Of the two?
Of the two, yes.
Oh my goodness. I think it's hard to really choose because I was in love with, all of those men. I was so young. You walk into a set, you see a guy that is like, gorgeous and funny and, generous, those men all were. And, and you're playing, it's just you're playing. Who gets to play, in your early 20s in things that you only dreamed of? So, no, I can't say I had a favorite. Every time there was a new show, it became my favorite show. So I never did a show. I have to say, I can't even think of a show I did that wasn't just unbelievably fun. It's playing, right?
And being able to experience a different world, I'm sure, is fascinating.
Yes,
and
you're right.
A thing of its own.
You're right, because you get to fall in love every day with someone different. You get to, like you said, live a life that's different. Oh, the costumes. My mother was so grateful because my mother always said when I was little, you're going to have to find a job where they dress you, because I was not a dresser. I can say I'm still not, but I'm kind of like, I like uniforms because I went to a Catholic school. So for me, my uniform is jeans and black shirt. So when I got on these shows, my mother was so thrilled. She would say, "Oh, you wore this beautiful pink dress with these beautiful red shoes." Yeah.
Well, next question we have. Actually, before the next question, we just wanted to give a shout out to whoever's listening, including Josh Mustafa, who said happy birthday, Ana-Alicia.
Oh, thank you, Josh. Listen, I'm looking at you. Hi, Josh. You can't see me, but I can see you. Thank you for coming on.
Okay, so next question. In 1981, you debuted in the big screen with one of those films born to be cult movies in the horror genre, more specifically the slasher. What memories do you have from Halloween 2?
I have so many memories. I see the movie's director all the time now. I just had dinner with him and his wife. He's such a lovely, lovely man. He was in my acting class at the time, and he, brought me in for that role, and I'll never, ever, ever forget it. And then when my daughter was going back was starting in acting, he actually put her on in his production company as an intern, and helping her in her career. And she found her, some casting people, eventually her manager indirectly, I think, through Rick Rosenthal. And he's also one of the producers of Transparent. Halloween for me was an opportunity to connect with somebody of the quality of Rick Rosenthal, and the actors are, still some of them I still, actually I haven't seen them in a very long time. There was a big reunion at Rick's place this Halloween, but I was at the Austin Film Festival, so I didn't get to go. He screened Halloween 2, and I was so jealous I didn't get to be there. But all the actors I worked with were amazing. And then, Jamie and I had started off at Universal. We were the last, maybe two of the last contract players there. And I had met her when we were really young. So, it was just a really, really fun show, particularly because the director and the actors, I knew a lot of them from my acting class.
This next question asks about your ethnicity and nationality. You have a Mexican ancestry and were born in Mexico but grew up in Texas. What did you feel when you noticed that the Hollywood producers used to make the huge mistake of considering any actor with a non-American accent just Latino, no matter if he or she was born in South America, Spain, or Italy?
Well, I think there's something to be said about ignorance. And I was raised, I was born and raised in Mexico. And my father born in Mexico, my brothers and sisters all born in Mexico, my mama Mexicana, but both her parents were from Mexico. And then moving to El Paso, which was, had a huge population of Mexican people, as well as, just really, El Paso, because it was on the borders, a very unusual type of town. I grew up feeling in a very interesting way, not different than anyone, because we were such a diverse community. I mean, just being on the border there. So I just felt, I felt not different as far as a girl versus boy, because I was raised by two brothers, older brothers. So I thought, and I had a sister, so I just thought I was just like all of them. I didn't think I was a girl. I thought I was a person. I didn't think I was Mexican. I thought I was a person. So I was blessed in that way. And when I came out to Hollywood, it never really crossed my mind that I couldn't play anything, because I was a person and I had all the feelings of a person. So I was very lucky. I had my first agent was Carlos Alvarado, who really, everybody loved Carlos. And so he would submit me for everything. He would submit me for Latinas. He would submit me for non-Latina roles. He would submit me for everything. So I was blessed, because I would play, Latina characters, and then I would play, Italian or whatever, or non-Latina characters. But it wasn't like it had to be a certain, in that time period for me, it was about playing a human being in this situation. I didn't think woman, man, nothing. And so it just gave me a lot of versatility, I think. And then when I went to my next agent, Ro Diamond, again, it wasn't, we never considered, the ethnicity of a particular role. So I wasn't, I think I wasn't sadly aware, really, of what was going on in the Latino community. I mean, most of my friends were Latinas because we'd go out for the same roles and things. A lot of us were actresses. But I didn't really understand it. I mean, I was, given awards through different Latino organizations, and I so appreciated them. And I'd go home to my hometown because I wasn't trying to be a Latina. I was Latina. I mean, my mama and I, spoke Spanish. My mother speaks Spanish in the house. My grandmother only spoke Spanish. My brothers. So it was just what I was, as a Mexican-American, person, woman. And so it wasn't until I went back, after raising my children for 23 years, and I went back and I looked at the industry, that I began to see from the outside, not from a young girl working inside the industry, from a producer coming outside and going, wow, this is an interesting time period. For, diversity in general, and for humanity, trying to come together in a time when things are just trying to, really pull us apart. So, our, mandate for Quebrada Entertainment is to create diverse content, with universal themes, just connecting us as human beings, whatever nationality we have, so I can't answer your questions in regard to 3 years ago. I think I was just too young to fully understand the impact of what was going on. But I can tell you that going back into it now, I don't see that things have changed really. And I would like them to move in a certain direction, in a human direction, where people are thought of as human beings, rather than a particular, whether you're whatever, female, male, whatever, nationality you have, that's your roots, that's your heart, that's your soul. But more than anything, we're all human beings. So sorry, I went on and on. Okay, wait.
I think that was well said. And Quebrada Entertainment is the company that Ana-Alicia is now putting together projects for, to get diverse stories out there, and to not just be on front of the camera, but behind it, pushing these stories out.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
So next question, Tony says, if I'm not mistaken, right after Halloween 2, you were cast as Melissa Agretti, the heiress to a winemaking fortune and soon to be one of the most seductive femme fatales in the 80s television. Once again, a Mexican actress cast as an Italian American, but you were much more convincing as an Italian woman than the main stars of the show, who supposedly also were of Italian ancestry. How did you achieve that big goal? I'd like you to elaborate about the audition process for the Melissa role, and if you know what other actresses were candidates.
You know, I think every actress across the United States was a candidate for this role, especially if you were Latina or, or Italian or, I didn't even know, to be honest with you, I didn't know whether she was going to be Latina or Italian or anything. I just knew that, she was this woman with this history of obviously her culture was a part of it, but that wasn't a big part of the audition process. The big part of the audition process was the type of woman she was. That she was, literally, trying, in fact, I think, Raymond, you said it really well the other day, just someone trying to make something out of her life, right? Like I think you were saying it like the movie Joy a little bit, that's coming out now. So, but the audition process was very interesting. The room was filled. They had already cast a different girl and actually shot an episode with her. And I never met her, but she obviously wasn't what the networks wanted. I mean, sadly for her. But when I came in, they were trying to replace her, and they were in the middle of it. And I was told it was going to be a guest star. And so I went in there, and it was the first time in any audition for a television that I knew something very clearly, that when I walked in that room, the most important thing was that whoever I was having the conversation with, this day being the casting director, who was supposed to be, Lorenzo Lamas, and she was a female, whoever it was, that by the time I finished my audition, I was going to have to seduce that person. Because you have to accomplish what your need is. And so I walked in there, and there was Earl Hamner. They all stood up, Earl Hamner, Bob McCullough, the writer and producer, Earl Hamner, the producer of the show, creator of the show, one of the creators of the show, and a wonderful, wonderful director, Larry Ellikin, was in that room. And I walked in there, they all stood, I came in, my makeup. I am, sitting at Doris's, feet, talking to her as if she was Lorenzo. And, my goal, my need is to seduce her. And at one point, I literally ran my fingernails up her stocking. And Earl Hamner stood up and he said, "That's really good. This is really good. Thank you so much." I think he got so embarrassed that I was seducing this woman in his room. But in my mind, she was just the person I was in love with. It didn't matter if she was a woman or not. And so everybody was really shocked in the room. I got up and I knew I had the role because everybody was red. And so I walked out of the room and got in my car, drove home. By the time I walked in my door, the phone was ringing and my agent said, "You just won the role." And so when I went on the set, a week later, my agent said to me before I went on the set, she goes, "Do it for the camera because we're negotiating for you. And this could be the difference between a guest star and a regular." So every time that camera was on me, it wasn't like I was aware of the camera, but it was almost like it made Melissa run deeper because Melissa wanted to be that. And so it allowed me to let Melissa out more and more and more. And sure enough, a couple of weeks into it, a couple of days into it, my agent said, "You're now a regular on the show." So it was pretty magical. But that doesn't always happen. But by then I had been acting for a couple of years in Hollywood and in New York. And so I had studied with a man named Milton Costellas who taught me a lot about doing auditions.
This next question is from Karen from Sweden. And she asked how you prepared for these crazy Melissa scenes. You did them very convincingly.
Well, I think that it's easy for me to tap into those places. I think that I have a huge imagination. And I also, I think, when I was young, and I don't want to get too serious, but when I was young, I was 6 years old when my dad passed away in the car that I was in. And, we were together in that car with my, family members and my dad, all alone for about 2 hours trying to find a doctor. And I think that's very, very traumatizing. And so, that traumatic, inception, that core, I think is inside of me, in a way that I don't even fully understand. And so at times it's not a difficult access for me. So it's nice to be able to use it to create art instead of using it to, become distraught. So sometimes, art is just a beautiful means of expression. But, thank you for, appreciating those places that I allow myself to go sometimes. When I did that Our Father scene, that was very real to me, having been raised Catholic. And also I think, now that I'm thinking about it, is, that kind of prayer. And I remember, when my dad was passing, is the intensity of the prayer. So we use our art, we use ourselves in our art as much as possible.
This fan question also comes from Adora, which was the previous question. What did you think of Melissa giving up Joseph for a stake in Falcon Crest? And has your view changed over the years since you became a mother yourself?
Well, I just didn't really care at all, obviously, as a mother, to give up my son for money. And yes, it was a thing of youth. In my elderly years as a mother, I would never give up one of my children for that measly sum.
Question 7. There is a bit of disagreement on the Soapchat forum regarding what we fans consider as the best years of Falcon Crest, but I really wanted to know your own opinion. Did you love the early years the best, the ones with creator Earl Hamner Jr. still supervising the series for the first 5 seasons, or your 2 last years with Jeff Freilich as executive producer for seasons 6 and 7?
I think the first year is always, in everything I do, is probably always the best year, because it's when everything is new, the relationships are new, just that whole world, becomes real for the first time. So it was just magic for me. It was a fulfillment of a dream. And as the years progressed, every year was pretty special, all the way up until the end, even as Samantha. But the first year is always, you'll never forget that year, first walking onto a set and seeing, Lorenzo Lamas and Billy Moses and all the incredible cast.
Baker, SBAKER from Toronto, asked, did Jeff Freilich have any plans for the Melissa character before the new producers took over? What direction would you have liked Melissa to take?
I always found that the writers and the producers on the show were very generous to me and to Melissa. They just gave me so many fun things to play with that I never really, had a problem with any of the directions they took Melissa. I just felt really blessed. Every single season, every single episode. I don't know where Jeff would have taken her, but it would have been a fun ride.
Who would you have married, Cole or Lance?
Well, I didn't marry either one of them. I married Gary Benz, but on the show, they were both the love of my life on the show, and each for different reasons. And you watching the show, I'm sure, know how uniquely different each one of those men were and still are. Do
you think the character Melissa loved one more than the other?
I think that kind of, I can't say that, because sometimes the emotions cross, and they were both family to me after 7 years on and off the screen. So I think she deeply and I deeply love both those men.
Back to another question from Medora, who says that there is a lot of speculation on the Falcon Crest forum about Melissa. One theory is if she was a victim of some form of abuse, which led her to her mental health issues and relationship difficulties. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I know that she didn't have a great relationship with her mother or her father. And I think that, breeds insecurity and a lack of empathy. So, I just think there was a hunger in Melissa always for stability, and she was not able to find it. She was a person who was alone, and, very self-centered. And I think that doesn't, make for happiness.
Tony wants to know if you would explain how you prepared for the role initially, and if you got help from any other member of the cast in particular.
Well, I think I reviewed that actually when I was talking about the audition and my mentors and what happened in that room and how I found her. I mean, there certainly were directors, that worked with me and truly gave me insight into her. Larry Ellikin was a big one, and so was Bill Duke and Harry Harris and Reza Badid. I just had some fabulous directors who guided me, and I think the cast members, just playing opposite some of these talented people, brought out different elements, and the writers. Let's not forget the writers who gave me such insight in the words and situations that I was put in.
Tony says you appeared in 173 episodes of Falcon Crest as Melissa and 5 more as her double Samantha Ross. That sums up almost 8 continuing years acting side by side with many formidable actors, American and not American. I'll mention random names of American actors that co-starred in Falcon Crest, and you might say something that we as viewers couldn't see in their characters but was a remarkable quality in them. So I'm going to go ahead and say a name, and if there's anything that particular comes to mind of that person, feel free.
And I think what we want to do is maybe to get through as many questions as we can. Maybe we'll name a few of her names and go on to the next person's questions.
Sounds good.
So we can just try to get through some.
Yes. Let's William R. Moses.
Oh, well, William and I are working together. I'm a producer on one of the things he's writing, and he is exceptionally intelligent and such an artist.
Susan Sullivan.
Susan Sullivan is just not just simply an artist, but also a professional. She's done amazing stuff both on the New York stage and, in a lot of the series even to date. She's a true professional.
Lana Turner.
Lana was, old school Hollywood. Glamour was everything, and I felt for her because it was so much about the way she looked, and as we age, it must make that very, very difficult, but she was a pro.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go on to the next question. Now let's do the same thing with non-American stars who appeared in the show. What impression did they leave on you? I'll add the character names in case you don't remember exactly who they played. Gina Lollobrigida.
Well, Gina was just a sexy, very, very fun actress, to watch on the set, and, very, very Italian and alive and beautiful.
And we'll do one more name, Rod Taylor, who played Frank Agretti.
Rod Taylor was such a gentleman in every sense and such a consummate actor. It was a pleasure to watch him.
Okay, moving on. Being Spanish, I really must ask you about the only Spanish actress who ever acted in Falcon Crest. Assumpta Serna, born in Barcelona, who played the ex-wife of your cousin in the series Nick Agretti. The character was named Anna Cellini. Yes, she played in Italian too, and she was in 8 episodes of your last season. You probably met her when you came back to the show to play Samantha Ross. Do you have any recollection of her?
Sadly, I don't. When I came in to play Samantha, I was, very insulated in a certain cast, and so I never really got to know any of the new characters.
This next question comes from Willie from the Netherlands, and he asks, is there anything in your house that reminds you of Falcon Crest, pictures or other memorabilia? Did the show bring you happiness? And finally, has anyone ever confused you with an actress from another soap?
First of all, I have a big bottle of Falcon Crest wine, a huge bottle that was given to me, and some Falcon Crest glasses, and that's really fun. What was the other question? Oh, nobody's ever thought I was anybody else on a soap opera. Sometimes they think that I look a little bit like Demi Moore. I think I've been told that from, and then the other question was, and did it show bring me happiness? I think it brought me, dreams come true and being thrilled and excited, but happiness, that's been a long road. I mean, I think my family taught me, what connection is to family and connection to yourself and an appreciation of who you are and trying to be a decent human being. And, karma, there's a lot of karma. And I think as, I've grown older, I've learned how to make happiness more something that is consistent and quiet inside rather than something that, I'm longing for every day.
Before we continue with Tony's questions, there are a couple people on Facebook who've been submitting questions for us as well. Brian Keith Price asks, Ana-Alicia, whose idea was for Spanish to be added to your scripts in Falcon Crest? You had a great impact on aspiring Spanish speakers.
Thank you. I really don't know. I can only guess that maybe it was Bob McCullough because Bob was one of the producer writers, and his wife, Suzanne, is a Mexican young woman, and she's, beautiful and exciting, and she's also writing with Bob now. So I think if anyone, I would have thought that he would have brought in the inspiration.
And then Joel Cornett asked, that, or says that he's listening now and wants to know what it was like working with Rod Taylor, and is it too late in your late 30s to do what you did and what your daughter is now doing in acting?
No, it's never too late. Listen, even where I am today, I'm thinking about going back to be, as an actress, not just as a producer. And it's simply because you have to remember it's nothing to do with the outside. It has everything to do with, what you bring in, as far as, your humanity and your life history and the way that you can empathetically connect to, the humanity that is, innate in every role that you're playing. So if you think of it from the outside, then you're never going to be the artist that you have to be and reach the level of, connection to a character or to a human being. You have to understand, what your needs are, what the world is for you. And that's all inside. So no, there is no age when you're an artist.
Awesome. So working with Jane Wyman must have been like studying drama in the Actors Studio 6 days a week. This is what Tony says. What did you think about her before joining the series? And what is the most cherished moment you keep from her almost 8 years after her passing? What was the hardest scene you had to do with her?
Well, the thing about when I watched the soap once before I came on it, and it was just an accident. I was laying in bed with my mom watching something over Christmas holidays, and this soap came on, and I remember telling my mother after I saw a scene with Jane and Robert Foxworth and Susan Sullivan and David Selby, I was watching these characters, and I was saying to my mom, wow, these are really good actors, Mom. These are artists. And so, Jane and Earl Hamner, these people, really cared about the work, and they brought everyone up. I mean, they cast people that were superior actors. So with Jane, I think we shared Catholicism. She was a pro. She came in before anybody else. She knew her lines better than anybody else. She knew her intent. She, was steady in between takes. She was a diabetic, so she often would take these little vanilla crackers just to keep her energy up. She was there to work, and all the scenes with Jane were very intimidating to me because she was so connected to her intent. I just feel very blessed that I worked with such professionals, not simply Jane, but everybody.
One fan named Fran asked, would you write a book to tell your memories of the Falcon Crest years? I'm sure many fans like me would be happy to read it.
I think that would be part of a book for me. Of course, I would, want to share a lot of this. This is my youth. This is my dreams. This is a big part of my life. But I don't know when I'm going to write that. Maybe when, I'm done producing and I've got my grandkids and I want to sit down and write this. I don't know when that'll be, but it would be really fun.
99% of the Falcon Crest fans agree with the fact that killing Melissa off was the jump the shark moment that ruined the series forever. The decreasing audience numbers also prove that, as well as your return to the show as a new character. What circumstances surrounded your last episodes in the series as Melissa and then as her double Samantha?
What circumstances? I just think that they made a decision. New producers were brought in, and as always, producers have their own ideas, their own concepts, and this producer, in all fairness, also had a connection to a different actress that he wanted to bring on to really take the place of Melissa. So, and I think that was the beginning of the change that was to happen in Falcon Crest. I do think that the heart of the show, when they started to eliminate main characters, and Melissa was not the only one, there were many that were removed. I think the heart was lost, and therefore the show began, to decline. And I think coming back as Samantha was a lot of fun. I loved playing Samantha, but she was no longer connected to those people. There was no longer the relationships, the family, those things that hold a show together that make viewers watch every week after week. And I think that's what happened.
And then we have a couple more questions from S. Baker. Were there ever any plans by the season 8 writers to possibly resurrect Melissa rather than have you come back to this show as her lookalike? It certainly would have been more economic. Were you ever approached to appear in season 9?
No, I never was, and I would have really loved to have all been a farce, that Melissa really didn't die, that she just, faked her death, for whatever purposes she had. But they never saw it that way. I mean, I often think if Falcon Crest was brought back, that would be it. That Melissa really never died. That she did, that things were done for a certain purpose. That would be so much more fun for me. But that never happened.
If you could have played a character from another 80s soap, what would it have been, and how would you have played it differently?
Well, I never considered that. So, I can't even imagine what that would have been, because Melissa was the ultimate character for me. I mean, how many women get to play, the vixen who also has, a lot of, a neurotic core having to do with pain and agony in her life, and the vulnerability that she had. And it was just so much fun. And the fact she danced and did crazy things, and the men that she dealt with and the women, I mean, it was extraordinary. I don't think there was another character on any soap as young as Melissa was that got that kind of range. So no, there's not another one I could think of.
That question came from Adora, and she also asked, who would you have liked to play your mother on Falcon Crest? I think Joan Collins myself.
Oh, Joan Collins, that would have been fierce. I mean, I would have loved to have seen, a Latina woman, Raquel Welch. That would have been fun. Gina Lollobrigida, that would have been really, really fun too. There was just Anya Magnani. I mean, there's just so many wonderful characters that would have been fun.
Tony asked that he thinks it'd be fun to talk a little bit about the famous Falcon Crest cliffhangers that ended every season. Was there as much secrecy about them as has been told by some of your co-stars? First of all, who killed Julia after she was revealed to be the murderer of Melissa's father? That's the season 2 cliffhanger. Is it true that there was a sort of fear amongst the cast because any of you might have been written off at that very moment? Were several versions shot?
You know what? I think there was some, maybe, I wouldn't say fear. I would say, we all kind of felt, at least for the first 7 years, that we were going to stay together. I mean, early on, we lost some wonderful actors. We lost Jamie Rose, who I missed a lot in the show. Mariska had, I can never pronounce it correctly. It's
Hargitay?
Hargitay. Yes, Hargitay. I want to pronounce it correctly. I always mispronounce it. Wonderful actress, obviously, and now wonderful director as well. Was on the show just for a few years. There were people that went off to greatness who left our show, but there were also a core of actors that we felt would remain actually until there was the change in the producers, and then the whole vision was changed. I didn't worry about cliffhangers. I don't remember worrying about cliffhangers. Going back to the question about who I would want to play my mother, it came to me, Gina Rowlands, because she was such a powerful actress. Even at when people thought she was old, she was 45, 50, she was playing this badass, sexy killer on the street. That's who I would want to play my mother.
To add to the cliffhangers, there's a story regarding the season 6 cliffhanger with your car falling into the San Francisco Bay. Is it true that the season 7 was going to start filming the same day due to a possible future strike, and who survived and who didn't depended on the negotiations between actors and producers that day?
If that was so, it doesn't surprise me, but I knew nothing of it.
Okay. Next one is from George or Jorge from Toronto. And apparently it was asked in Spanish, so maybe you could answer it in Spanish. Did you get to watch yourself speaking in Castilian Spanish? And if you did, what did you think about your Spanish voice?
I never got to see it until just recently, right? Raymond,
Right.
You and I got to see my Spanish voiceover artist and the German voiceover artist. And both were excellent. I thought they made my performance much better. So yeah, bravo to them.
Pensé que te gustaría esto. Por tu triunfo. Es lo que queda de mi traje de novia.
This is a question I've been wondering about for the last 30 years, writes Tony. In the season 5 episode Strange Bedfellows, your character and Father Christopher shared a swim in a lake. There's been talk here about what really happened in that scene, or better said, what we didn't know for sure that happened, because there was no real explanation in the subsequent scenes of Melissa or Father Christopher. I thought you might know the truth about their kissing scene. I'd also like to know why that specific storyline with Ken Oland's character was abruptly dropped in the middle of the season.
Well, I'd like to know that too, because there was a lot of chemistry there. And I knew Ken's wife as well, okay? So let me just say that. But Ken and I, it was to me, it was kind of a thrilling, daring thing to do way before it was cool. I think there was, a lot of times, priests would go into priesthood without any real experience in life. And so to find someone that you were, you were attracted to later on and complicate things, I think was pretty human. So it was an exciting storyline. I think it was probably dropped because I think the fans probably went crazy. I think we probably had a fan base that was a lot Catholic. Or maybe it was even Jane, because Jane was so Catholic. I don't know. That is such a good question. I have no idea. But Ken and I really enjoyed working together.
One more thing about we have been listening to a lot of dubbing in different languages for those who did the dubbing in Germany and in Spain. We wanted to give a shout out to the actress Cristina Victoria who did the dubbing in Spain. And apparently the person who did the dubbing for Jane Wyman recently passed away, and her name was Matilde Conesa. And she was a legend of dubbing and radio in Spain.
How cool is that? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dora asks, if there was a Falcon Crest continuation and they brought Melissa back from the dead, would you reprise the role?
In a second. It would be so much fun. Oh my gosh, that would be a dream come true. I mean, I wouldn't want to do it any other way. To me, it would be fun if she, also had supernatural quality, because that's something I never got to play on the show. So I don't know why Melissa couldn't come back from the dead. She could do everything else. And I want to say a few things in Spanish because I realized I did the whole thing in English. Quiero darles mis gracias a todos que están aquí conmigo, que nomás hablan español, y espero que cuando esto ya lo pongan, lo escriban en español también para que puedan leer lo que yo dije. Pero muchísimas gracias por todas sus preguntas. Le agradezco mucho. Other questions?
Next question comes from Fran. It would be wonderful making a reunion of all the main stars at the real Falcon Crest mansion, sharing your memories. Would you be interested in it?
I think it would be really fun. We did that at the Paley Center, actually in 2010, and they interviewed us, and it was a lot of fun to be together with the cast.
This next question comes from Tony. He says, your first acting gigs after Falcon Crest were an episode of Moonlighting titled And the Flesh Was Made Word, where the famous couple saved you from an attempted suicide in a bridge. And the movie Romero, starring Raúl Julia, based on actual facts. What were those two experiences like?
Well, Moonlighting was just another dream come true. Bruce Willis was a doll. I mean, I had a lot of scenes with him as I was hanging off a bridge and he was holding onto my hand. So it was pretty exciting. And it was also scary because I was supposed to be a little crazy and I was crying all the time. And I remember there was this one scene and I just didn't think I was going to cry. And the director looked at me a certain way because he was afraid I was just going to be so bad. So I started crying. And it worked. And then on Romero, I've worked with Julia. He was just an unbelievably gifted and generous man. He would invite us to his dinner at night, to his home for dinner at night. It would be Tony Plana, his wife Ada, Richard, a brilliant actor, and we'd go to his house and have arroz con pollo and cuernavaca and sit there and talk. And it was a beautiful experience. And the writer, John Saker Young, and the director, it was very much of a family. It was pretty special.
This next question is actually an incorrect thing coming from the internet from IMDb. Adora asks, I see from IMDb that you are credited as starring in a new series about Mexican cartels called Frontera Roja. Has it been filmed yet, and can you tell us about your role?
Well, I think that would have had to be like a supernatural experience because I've never been on that show. I never auditioned for that show. I wish. I would love to do a series and play a Latina woman. I would love that, to be able to use Spanish and English and go back and forth and play like a Latina Melissa. That would be so much fun.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
As soon as anything comes out, I'm pretty sure we'd be telling everyone on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So
absolutely.
At the moment, there's no roles that you are taking over,
or even auditioning for.
But if and when that happens,
we will tell them.
For sure.
For sure.
What advice would you give your own children if they were interested in a career in acting?
Well, one of my children is an actress, and she advises me because she's really smart. She's got her own vision and her own strengths, and an incredibly talented young woman. So I guess when she was younger, when she was a little girl, it was just about really, saying the truth as an actress. I would always say just be truthful, because I didn't want to coach my daughter, and she wanted to be an actress. She was 5 before she even knew I was ever an actress. And I would just say, it's the truth. Just say the truth. And so she's a very honest young actress. And just, be who you are and be happy with who you are. I think that would be what I would say.
Willie asks, when was the last time you visited the Falcon Crest mansion?
I have not gone back since we used to film there. So I think the last time I was being thrown into the swimming pool there. It's really fun.
Tony has 2 more questions. First one is, did you watch the TNT continuation of Dallas, and what was your opinion about it? What did you think about the treatment of Latino characters in the show? And since you filmed Falcon Crest at the same studio as Dallas, I'd love to know if you met our very dear Larry Hagman, and what did you think of him as an actor and or as a person?
Well, we didn't film at the same studios. I mean, maybe initially we did, for the first season, but then we moved immediately to CBS Radford, a tiny little studio in Studio City that was very special. It felt like home. It wasn't a big studio. I met Larry a couple of times. I didn't really know him very much. He was a big persona. I mean, it was powerful. You were around him and very intimidating. I got to know Linda a little bit, and she was just stunningly beautiful and very lovely. Larry was just a big persona, and so no, I didn't know him.
And did you connect at all with the TNT continuation of Dallas?
I never really watched it. I didn't. I was still in mother mode. I think I wasn't really fully into getting back to work, so I never watched it.
Okay, this last question. Finally, we all would like to know about your future projects and also a bit about your family, to whom you've devoted the last 20 years almost entirely.
Well, I've been blessed to have a family and to be able to raise children with actually a wonderful father, and a good man who's really allowed me to stay home and be with my kids. And I will never regret that. It was such an easy decision, to be, if I wanted my kids and I could afford to stay home, which, my mother wasn't able to stay home. I wanted to stay home and have those moments and those years with my kids. So when you've kind of left everything on the court, it's pretty cool. Unbelievable. The most difficult years of my life was raising my children, and the most rewarding years of my life. And now it's great. I feel very lucky to have a passion, to be a producer, to create, diverse content with, universal themes, humanity, and also to be thinking about going back to acting and feeling that passion again. There's so many lives that we live. I feel very blessed to have that passion.
Josh Mustafa asked a question about how your kids reacted from your roles. Did they react to any role particularly?
Well, my kids never knew I acted because, my husband never really wanted me to tell them, and I was, out of the business really completely. And until my daughter was 9, my son was 7, and then I sat them down, and this is after my daughter for 5 years had already told me she wanted to be an actress, or for 4 years, all on her own, and she was already doing school plays and things like that. I sat them down and I let them watch. I can't remember, Battlestar Galactica or some, little thing that I had done, and I showed it to them, and my daughter and my son are looking at it on the big television, and my daughter just said, Mama, that moment wasn't very good. And right then and there I knew this is an artist. And then my son looked at it and he said, Mama, you were so beautiful. Just like a little boy would say about his mama. So that was the first time they ever knew I acted. And after that, it wasn't part of what we did because I didn't go back to acting. It was really my daughter's life. We would go see her plays and her in Romeo and Juliet and her dancing and my son playing soccer. It was all about them. And that's beautiful when it's no longer about you. It's about nurturing other people. It makes life really kind of nice.
And as we round down to about a minute and a half left in the second part of the podcast, Josh actually wanted to know, how did your kids react after you opened your Facebook account and the huge response and how much people miss you?
Well, I haven't really spoken to my kids about that. I don't speak a lot about myself and what we're doing. It's kind of Raymond's and I world. We come in here and we do our social media, and it's really fun to reach out to all of you and all my fans. I think that my kids are proud of me just simply because, I work really hard at whatever I do, and because I care. It's been such a pleasure to share this life with my daughter, who's an actress, and now with my son, who has been helping me in producing and developing. He's, in my mind, a wonderful writer and a wonderful thinker. I think they're proud at whatever I do, as long as I give it all that I've got.
Just one more question. How does it feel to be the new Queen of Tuscany?
It feels long overdue.